and today we're going to be taking a look at Magical Knight Rayearth. Now before I get into the whole review for it, all I have to say is that there's actually two parts to this, or seasons of what you might say. So there's part 1 which has like 20 episodes, and then part 2 has 29 episodes. And all I'm going to say is that I'm only going to do part 1. Because I find that part 2 is pretty different enough that I can actually do a separate review for it, so possibly sometime in the future I may have to do that one. So with that being said, I'm only going to be doing part 1. So Magical Knight Rayearth is an anime that is a magical girl of fantasy adventure and even has some mecha stuff thrown in. I'll explain that in a little bit, but one thing that is interesting to note is that most people that I know that are familiar with this anime mostly know it from the game that was released on the Sega Saturn, because as you know, games is more of my priority. So with that being said, I know more people that know about the game than at the actual show itself. So for now, let's talk about the story. So it begins with the character Hikaru, who is headstrong and tomboyish, and she is on a field trip to go to the Tokyo Tower, which is a real place inside, well, you know, Tokyo. And there happen to be 2 other schools going to the Tokyo Tower as well, and one of them is a private school, and the character Fu is in that one. And she is the very intelligent but also innocent type. And finally there's a school that only certain people can get in, and the character from there is named Yumi, who happens to get angry pretty easily and can be reckless at times. But a lot of people like her because she is very pretty. So after when they see each other for the very first time, a big flash happens, and now they wake up inside a whole other world not knowing anything what just happened. And then a sorcerer guy named Clef shows up and tells them what's going on. So apparently they're in a world called Saphiro, and the current pillar of the world is named Princess Emerald, and she is in grave danger because she got abducted by Zagato. He's one of many antagonists within this show, and he's watching all over Sephiroth unleashing monsters onto the world, and seeing the reactions of Sephiroth not having a pillar, which by the way leads to the whole world crumbling. So in other words, he's an asshole. Now there's quite a few antagonists within this show, and I won't get into all of them, but I will have to say one more, and her name is Elsie Onna. And she's an ice sorceress who actually learned under Clef, but she decided to go under Zagato's side because she actually loves him, but of course he doesn't give a shit about her. So she ends up invading the girls, but she ends up turning Clef into stone. Now he is partially alive, but not really, mainly because he's, you know, he's stoned, meaning he's high as fuck right now. So unfortunately he did not give enough details to tell the girls everything that he wanted to because of that. Because something that he did tell them before he got turned into stone was that the 3 girls are actually a descendant of magic knights. Now I don't really think I need to explain this, I mean it's pretty basic stuff, it's just, you know, they're knights and they have magical powers. And the fact that the Magic Knights are the only thing they have left to defeat Zagato. But after escaping from Elsie Onna, they pretty much have to work together without knowing a damn thing about each other. So as you would expect, a lot of them are pretty skeptical about the whole situation. And Yumi of all people really just wants to go back to Tokyo because she has a fencing tournament next week. But eventually they do get some weapons from someone named Pursia. And she's a blacksmith, so you know that makes sense with the whole getting weapons from her. And she has a bunny-like thing called Mokana. And Mokana does travel around with the 3 Magic Knights. Reasoning is that she knows where to go, and she also has some gem on her forehead which allows her to do certain things, like the whole contact thing with Clef even though he's like stoned out of his mind. So that being said, Mokana is pretty important, and she also does many other things. So one of the things they have to do before they fight Zagato is that they have to awaken 3 rune gods. And the rune gods are the things that turn into mechs. And you might be thinking, okay, well that sounds like the most dumbest thing I ever heard. No, yeah, when I say it like that, it probably does sound dumb, and yeah, I would also have to say that this does sound like something that I would have came up with if I was like 8 years old. But I have to say though, the mech stuff is actually kinda cool, despite, you know, it being very like a fantasy-like thing with have like robots thrown in. Which is quite possibly one of the most random things about this show, but hey, at least it's kinda different. And that's the basic of the story in this one. Now it is pretty typical fantasy stuff, but the thing that I do like about this one is the characters. I find a lot of the characters to be pretty fun, and I really like the interaction with each other, especially with the 3 main characters. It's pretty interesting to see a bunch of characters not knowing anything about each other, but they have to work for each other anyway, and then eventually they become best friends. So I really do like that aspect. Also, the show can be pretty funny at times. Now I wouldn't say this is something that's not to be taken seriously, but it does have like a good mix of both, of funny and serious stuff. So I'd have to say that the story is pretty decent stuff, but the characters are what makes it great. And it would be nice to talk about more of the other characters, but we'd be here forever, so I'm just here to give you the basics that, yeah, the story, I really enjoyed this one. So now let's move on to animation, and all I have to say is that the animation is, well, I fucking love it. I really like the detail that they put into the character designs. I think it looks amazing. Then again, it is done by Clamp, and as you know, I really do like a lot of Clamp's work, so that being said, I really like that. And of course the settings look really nice, just the flow of the animation looks good. So I really can't complain about the animation whatsoever, but I really enjoy it myself. But definitely the character designs and the mech designs as well look fucking great. Now as for the music, I think the background music in this show is actually very fitting and I really do like it. So there's not a lot I can say right there, but what I will have to say is that the opening theme is fucking awesome. In fact, I would actually probably put it up there with some of my favorite opening theme songs from animes such as like Macross, Zeta Gundam, Code Geass Hack Sign, Death Note Fist of the North Star, and another. And of course I can name more later on, but I just wanted to talk about the ones that I've already talked about already. And there are some that I'm going to be getting into later on this year, but anyways, the point is that I really love the opening theme song. It's really upbeat and very catchy. So as again, nothing else I can complain about, but it's awesome. Now as for the voice acting, it's actually not too bad. It's far from the best thing I ever heard, but it's definitely not bad. So Julie Madalena plays Hikaru, and I think she does do a pretty good job. Then again, I always found that she was a little bit on the underrated side. And then you have Wendy Lee playing Yumi, who I think does a really good job. Now I always do enjoy her work, but I did found that she did do a really good job as this role. And then Fu is being played by Bridget Hoffman, although she is using the name Ellen Wickinson, but it's the same person. So anyways, Bridget Hoffman I always found to be pretty underrated as well, but here, she does okay, but not as good as some other roles that she has done. But here she's not too bad, although maybe a little bit inconsistent, but not the worst thing ever. And finally I'll mention is Zagato, and he's being played by Lex Lang. Now it seems like this year I've been pretty critical on him, where I know in the show Lupin III he did an okay job, and then in Fist of the North Star he didn't do that great. But here, I actually found he was pretty good. So early on, I think he did a really good job of a villain role this time. Or, you know, it could have just been the fact that the voice director for the show actually did a pretty decent job. But as for the rest of the voices, they're not too bad. They're not the greatest thing ever, but it's definitely not the worst thing ever. So with that being said, the voice acting in English is actually pretty good. At least I didn't mind it myself. Now before I reveal the score, all I have to say is that I originally watched the show in the year 2006 I believe, and from what I remember seeing it at that time, I actually really enjoyed it. And now that I have rewatched it again, although this time I only watched part 1, if I were to rate this one, I'm gonna have to give it an 8 out of 10. Yeah, I enjoyed it just as much as I did back then. And yeah, I know that was only like 10 years from now, but still. Since the year 2006, my taste has changed over time, but I still happen to like this one just as much. Because I like the adventure aspect of it, I like the characters, the settings, the animation and art style, and even the music is good too. Now I may not have very many issues with the show itself, but there are definitely some flaws here. But the flaws that are here are nothing that really breaks it. At least for me they don't, because I know for a fact that every single show you're gonna watch will have some flaws in it, whether they be big or small. And in this one I'd have to say they're really small. Even in some of my all-time favorite animes, they still have some flaws in them, of course. But if I really had to complain about something, is that Yumi can get kind of annoying with her constant bitching, but I mean, whatever, it's not really a big deal for me. So as you can tell, I'm not really good when it comes to nitpicking and shit, because really, nitpicking fucking sucks. So with that being said, I think an 8 out of 10 is good as it is. And it seems like recently in this feature that I'm giving out 8 out of 10s all the time, but hey, I'm not gonna complain because 8 is great.